The night your soul feels weighted, and God waits to renew you. The evening comes, and with it the familiar heaviness that burdens your mind and heart. Every worry, every unresolved emotion, every unspoken fear seems louder in the quiet of the night. You sense it, an invisible pressure pressing on your spirit, making rest feel impossible. Moses, guided by God, understood the weight of such nights. Even the greatest leader faced moments when the soul was overburdened and the mind restless. Psalm 91 is not merely a passage to read. It is a spiritual renewal plan, a blueprint for your soul to release the chains of exhaustion, fear, and anxiety. Urgency strikes immediately. The longer these burdens remain unacknowledged, the heavier they grow, entangling your mind, body, and spirit. Scarcity emphasizes that few know how to reclaim peace before the night deepens, yet you can. Authority reminds you that God allows this tension not to punish, but to prepare your soul for restoration. The plot twist. What feels like pressure is actually an invitation. God calling you back to rest, renewal, and alignment. This video will guide you to recognize the unseen chains of weariness, to declare God's authority over your overburdened soul, and to experience the restoration that only divine presence can provide. You will learn to distinguish fear from divine direction, anxiety from spiritual alert, and burden from a call to surrender. Moses shows that even under great pressure, renewal is available for those who turn to God. Tonight, you are invited to release your burdens, awaken to God's authority, and receive the renewal your soul desperately needs. Feel the weight lift as you recognize that rest, peace, and restoration are not distant. They are ready for you now, through God's protective, renewing power. Recognizing the invisible burdens. Many carry weight that the eye cannot see. Burdens of guilt, fear, and unspoken sorrow that grow heavier when the world is quiet. These invisible chains press on the mind, clouding clarity and suffocating joy. Moses knew this intimately. Leading a nation was not only a test of strength, but also a confrontation with the unseen pressures that come with responsibility and spiritual vigilance. Psalm 91 illuminates this truth. The night is not just a pause in activity, it is a battlefield where invisible burdens seek to dominate your heart and mind. Urgency hits immediately. Ignoring these burdens allows them to strengthen, shaping your perception, your decisions, and your sense of peace. Scarcity warns that few recognize how to face these pressures proactively, yet the opportunity to reclaim your soul is present now. Authority reminds you that God does not leave the overburdened soul abandoned. He allows you to see the weight so that you may release it through faith and divine guidance. Plot twist. What feels like helplessness, exhaustion, or spiritual attack is often a signal for awakening. These burdens exist not to destroy, but to highlight where your soul requires renewal. Anxiety is not your enemy. It is a messenger guiding your attention to what must be surrendered and transformed. Awareness of invisible burdens is the first step toward liberation, restoring clarity and preparing your heart for God's renewing power. By recognizing what cannot be seen, the pressures, the fears, the exhaustion, you empower yourself to take the next step. Active surrender and declaration of divine authority over your soul. Moses demonstrates that acknowledging these invisible chains is not weakness. It is the gateway to receiving God's strength, protection, and restoration. Tonight, open your heart to discern these invisible burdens. See them, name them, and prepare to release them. God's shield is ready, His renewal is at hand, and your overburdened soul can finally breathe under His authority, activating God's renewing power. Recognition alone does not free the soul. Action aligned with God's authority brings renewal. Psalm 91 teaches that protection and restoration are activated through faith, spoken declarations, and intentional surrender. Moses understood that overburdened souls cannot wait passively. Strength must be called forth through acknowledgement of God's power and presence. When fear threatens, when exhaustion weighs heavy, when invisible pressures tighten, the believer's response becomes the key to release. Urgency intensifies. Every moment delayed allows burdens to deepen, anxiety to grow, and the enemy to exploit inactivity. Scarcity emphasizes that few seize the night to actively invoke God's renewing power, and those who do experience profound transformation. Authority rests in the truth that God honors intentional faith, and words spoken in alignment with His will carry the power to dismantle spiritual chains. Plot twist: what appears as relentless fatigue or creeping despair is actually a divine invitation. When you declare His protection, when you lift your heart in surrender, and when you invite His Spirit to intervene, the overburdened soul begins to lighten. Fear and weariness are not signs of failure. They are markers that the moment for renewal is here. Moses exemplified this principle, trusting God to act even before circumstances shifted, knowing that divine intervention flows most powerfully through faith-filled action. Curiosity and attention sharpen. How can invisible forces be countered when unseen pressures press so heavily? The answer is in Psalm 91, activation through faith, recognition of God's presence, and verbal proclamation of His authority. The process transforms the soul. Fatigue becomes rest, despair becomes hope, and anxiety becomes peace. Tonight, prepare to call forth God's renewing power. Speak with intention, believe with conviction, and open your heart fully. Moses shows the path. Acknowledge the pressure, declare God's authority, and watch as the overburdened soul experiences divine restoration. When invisible forces attempt to dominate. Even in the quiet of the night, invisible pressures seek to dominate the mind, heart, and spirit. Anxiety that seems unprovoked, restlessness that feels unending, and fear that creeps silently. These are not mere coincidences. Moses understood that unseen forces often act without warning, aiming to steal peace, clarity, and strength from those who are already burdened. Psalm 91 teaches that vigilance and trust in God's authority are essential to prevent these forces from gaining control. Urgency becomes palpable. The longer these unseen pressures are ignored, the stronger their hold, and the more difficult it becomes to reclaim inner peace. Scarcity reminds us that few recognize how to resist and disarm these forces effectively. Yet those who act with faith experience liberation. Authority rests in the truth that God's protective power is not passive. It responds to those who actively align their hearts and declarations with His will. Plot twist: the very forces that seek to overwhelm you are limited by God's authority. Recognition and faith transform the unseen from a source of fear into an opportunity for spiritual growth and renewed strength. Anxiety is not a signal of defeat. It is an invitation to call upon God's intervention, to remind the soul that His shield is present even when eyes cannot perceive it. Moses demonstrated that by facing invisible pressures with trust and declarations of faith, the overburdened soul is safeguarded and spiritual victory becomes inevitable. Pain versus pleasure triggers push you to choose: remain captive to invisible stresses, or activate God's protective promises and reclaim peace. Awareness alone is not sufficient. The soul must respond with faith, verbal affirmation, and surrender. Psalm 91 shows that protection, renewal, and liberation are not passive. They require active alignment with God's power. Tonight, acknowledge these invisible forces. Recognize their presence, but do not yield. Speak God's authority. Trust His shield and prepare to experience the restoration of your overburdened soul. Moses walked this path. So can you. Declaring God's authority and receiving renewal. True renewal comes when the overburdened soul speaks faith aloud, aligning the heart, mind, and spirit with God's authority. Psalm 91 emphasizes that protection and restoration are activated through intentional declaration. Moses knew that waiting silently would allow invisible forces to gain strength. Action, guided by faith, is required to release the soul from unseen chains. Speaking God's promises over yourself, your family, and your environment is not ritual. It is a spiritual act that shifts the balance of power from fear to divine authority. Urgency strikes. Every moment delayed allows pressures to tighten, increasing fatigue, anxiety, and spiritual heaviness. Scarcity reminds us that few exercise this power intentionally before nightfall, and those who do unlock profound peace and renewal. Authority rests in the truth that God honors intentional faith, and words spoken in alignment with His will carry the force to dismantle spiritual oppression. Plot twist: what feels like vulnerability and overwhelm is actually an invitation to wield divine power. Fear, exhaustion, and anxiety are transformed into indicators of where your faith must act. By declaring God's authority, the invisible chains that once constrained your soul begin to crumble. Moses demonstrated this principle consistently, trusting God to act even when circumstances suggested defeat, knowing that verbalized faith activates protection and restoration. Curiosity and attention sharpen. How can invisible pressures be countered effectively? The answer lies in Psalm 91. Claim God's promises aloud, speak with conviction, and invite His Spirit to intervene. These declarations do more than comfort. They activate spiritual renewal. The overburdened soul that acts in faith experiences fatigue turning into rest, anxiety into peace, and spiritual captivity into liberation. First call to action. Write a prophetic phrase aloud, declaring God's authority and protection over your soul, mind, and life. Feel the shift as His power responds to your faith. Moses shows the path. Acknowledge the pressure, speak God's authority, and step into renewal. Rest in peace after renewal. Renewal is completed when the soul aligns fully with God's protection and authority. Psalm 91 illustrates the final stage: awareness of invisible burdens, declaration of God's promises, and the reception of His restorative power. Moses rested not because circumstances were perfect, but because he trusted in God's shielding presence. For the overburdened soul, this is the moment where anxiety transforms into peace, rest replaces tension, and spiritual chains dissolve. Urgency reinforces the truth. Every night provides the opportunity to release the weight of unseen pressures. Scarcity emphasizes that few consistently practice this alignment, yet those who do experience profound spiritual, mental, and emotional restoration. Authority rests in the certainty that God honors intentional faith and declarations, responding with protection, healing, and clarity. Plot twist: the burdens you carried all day are dismantled not by your strength, but by activating God's authority over your life. Pain versus pleasure triggers encourage decisive action. Continue under the weight of unseen chains, or step into the fullness of God's renewing power. The overburdened soul cannot wait passively for relief. Engagement, faith, and declaration are essential. Moses exemplifies that alignment with God produces rest and spiritual victory, even in the presence of invisible pressures. Second call to action. Like plus subscribe to help spread the word of God, allowing more souls to discover spiritual renewal. Finally, seal this moment by praying the Lord's Prayer, invoking divine peace and protection. Feel the final emotional seal. Your mind, heart, and spirit rest fully under God's authority. Tonight, invisible chains are broken. Your soul rests renewed, overburden lifted, and your life under the divine shield of God's protection.